Welcome to the Living Consciously TV show live from our Denver, Colorado studios. I'm your host and moderator, Coach Steve Toth, and our theme today is how to interrupt being on an automatic pilot. Let me introduce you to our guest cast as well as our entire Self-Evolution cast. Our guest cast today is Tori Kaczynski, and he joins us somewhere from New York. Welcome to the show, Tori.
Hello, everybody.
Good to have you.
Thank you.
Looks beautiful in New York. And we also have Ninon Diver de Rosa, and she is part of our Self-Evolution cast, and she joins us from that beautiful Las Vegas, the City of Lights. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. It is definitely a city of lights, but at the moment we have a temperature of 115, guys. Whoa, it's hot.
Oh, wow.
But anyway, I'll send a little heat your way if you need it.
That is warm. Thank you. And then we also have Jenna Cook, and Jenna Cook is part of our Health and Wellness Evolution cast, and she's joining us from Aurora, Colorado. Welcome to the show, Janet.
Thank you. Thank you.
And,
glad to be here.
And last but not least, we have Linda Dyer, and she is also part of our Self-Evolution cast, and she's joining us from that beautiful place called Australia, down under. Welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. It's wonderful to be here.
All right, great to have you. And opening up the show, I'd like to, this question, of course, goes out to our guest, Tori. So, Tori, were you ever on automatic pilot? And if you were, how did you interrupt it?
Was I ever on automatic pilot? You know what, Steve? I was when I was a child. Mm-hmm. And that's why I realized that being on automatic pilot was something that's possible. And as I grew up and I grew out of it, I realized that something was missing. Only after I tried to find it again, and I was able to, and actually, one of our guests today, I believe, is from Fiji, if I'm not mistaken. That's sort of where I found it again, at an event in Fiji, where I fasted for almost a month and immersed myself back in nature to find myself, or the part of me that I lost at one point as a child.
Okay, got it. And so I'm also curious from the rest of the cast, if anybody would like to share anything about what was your experience of being an automatic pilot, and how did you interrupt it?
Well, for me, I've been on automatic pilot for many, many years, and I don't think I became conscious until about maybe 12, 14 years ago, until I was introduced to a modality that really was about healing. So for me, I was just unconscious. I would kind of want to keep going up the corporate ladder, and I thought this is what I wanted. I'd get there, and it never satisfied me. I never had inner peace, and it was fascinating. It was a fascinating journey. I learned a lot. So looking back, I was one of those guys, one of those gals, just unconscious in life.
Yeah, got it. Anybody else?
I think.
Go ahead, Linda.
I think for me, I had to get a disease to stop. I was just thinking that you had to make the most out of life. And so I just thought, well, you just do everything wherever there's light. I found something to do, whether it was swimming or tennis and working 2 jobs. And I could do all of that. And then I fell really, really ill. And that was my segue to something's not right here. There needs to be a change, and it was a dramatic change and a wonderful change.
Okay, got it. So Tori, you want to go, Ninon?
Yeah, I wanted to say something that I agree with Tori. I think it's a lot to do with our childhood, that sort of we've got this incredible life for the first 10, 12 years of our life is so beautiful that we really don't appreciate it because we're obviously too young, and sort of we have such a beautiful life, and then all of a sudden all this stuff gets evolved into it, and you start kind of not get yourself lost, but you start doing things that are sort of not really taking you anywhere, but the experience is great. So I think when I got married, actually, I kind of suddenly realized how beautiful everything was, and suddenly started being very, very conscious because I had somebody else to kind of, I'm not going to say care for, because I didn't really care for my husband, because we had a beautiful relationship on one-on-one and each other. So I think that was the one that sort of started making me really conscious of what life was really all about, and who I was and why I was and how to enjoy it.
Okay, great. Thanks, Ninon. So, Tori, what was your? How could you help our viewers to get access to what does being an automatic pilot looks like and feels like?
Oh, It's such an inspiring feeling, because when you're on automatic pilot, it feels like there's nothing really stopping you from from your goals, your admiration, your what you aspire to be, what you aspire to do. For me, things just happen, like you said, Steve, automatic. Things start happening automatic in the sense that you start thinking about what you want in your life, and then it happens. Instead of the stereotypical, I want something, and then you strive to get it, and it actually starts to cause, stress in your life. For me, it was a connection with nature, for one thing, and I realized that, as we get bogged down, and I use an analogy of people shoveling dirt on us as we grow. As you were able to find your way out of that cloud of dirt or dust, and I found it through nature. We were able to tap back into the collective consciousness of the universe.
Okay, got it. So for me, well, actually, let me ask you this first. So now that you are awake and conscious,
Yes.
is there a way that have you even thought about or wanting to go back to the way things were?
Oh, I really can't see any use for it.
But have you thought about? Has that ever crossed your mind?
Well, here's the thing, Steve. When you talk about consciousness or unconsciousness, right? The conscious mind only processes a very small fraction of what we experience in our lives, right? So when I talk about that cloud of dirt or that dust cloud that we get immersed in our life, what really is happening, from my perspective, is that if you imagine our conscious mind as being a small hard drive, and our unconscious mind being a very big hard drive. As that big hard drive gets really full and overloaded, as we start to need to access things in our life that you can't remember, and we go back there, just like an overloaded drive, it's clumsy, it's slow moving, it's slow going, and we can't access things very quickly. So, from my perspective, it's about getting rid of that big drive and cutting all the garbage out. It's like cleaning the drive, cleaning all the garbage out and putting in there only what you need. So it's like going on a vacation for a week. You don't need to bring 7,000 pairs of pants and 8,000 shirts.
Sorry, are you trying to give me a message here? I'm leaving tomorrow. Don't tell me to sort of not pack with so much stuff.
Well, with the ladies that are on the call today, I was going to say about 9,000 pairs of shoes for 7 days, but.
Well, I don't know why you said shoes, because shoes is my thing. I have to have a different pair of shoes for each outfit. Shoes are very heavy. So do I want to pay for all these shoes just to go to England to wear a different pair? So that's quite funny.
But if you use shoes as an analogy, right? If our unconscious mind is using 7,000 pairs of shoes and we only need about 4 or 5, think about going in and having to select the 4 or 5 favorite shoes that we need in the moment amongst 7,000 pairs of shoes. It could be a problem. Maybe for some of the women it's not, but for me it would be a big problem.
Can I just say it's not just a woman's problem. I'm moving 2 people at the moment, literally physically moving them, and they're both hoarders. And one's 90 and the other one's 30. And it's like making a decision to say, what do you want to do? And like, what do you want to take with you? What do you want to take with you? Because they've collected so much stuff around them. And it's like, I have to have all this stuff around me to make me feel good, rather than I feel good and I really don't need all this stuff. Yeah, it's really, really interesting behavior. And I've actually called in family to help, because I just can't live like that. I don't live like that. The truck's going to have to stay for an extra day.
Sounds like you need a whole team.
Oh, thank you. That'd be lovely.
It's funny you should talk about that. It's funny because I was just in Los Angeles for 4 days, and I had packed a certain amount of stuff. And in those 4 days, it was perfectly all right, everything I had. I didn't have that much. And I was actually thinking to myself, wouldn't it be great to just live like this and not have all this stuff? I have a house full of furniture. I have closets and closets and closets of clothes. And I was thinking, this is so comfortable and so relaxing of just living with the minimal amount of stuff. It was so peaceful, though, Tori, very, very peaceful. And I was actually thinking, I could live the rest of my life like this.
it just made me think about a gentleman I met many years ago. I went to Brazil for a month, so never being on a trip for that long, I packed a lot of clothes, a lot of suitcases. And I met a guy there that was already there for a month, and he was going to be there the same month that I was going to be there. And he had 2 T-shirts and 2 pairs of jeans. And when he was wearing his jeans and his T-shirt, he was washing the other pair. And I thought, what a brilliant, way of living. And I believe that in order to really stay in our unconsciousness, in our mind or collective consciousness, we need to adapt sort of that type of policy of getting rid of that clutter.
I love it. I think it's brilliant. I'm trying to think going away, which is very appropriate of what we're talking about. And I'm trying to think how much can I not take with me, not how much can I take with me.
What a
so
wonderful,
I'm reversing it.
What a wonderful challenge that would be just before your trip, huh?
Well, it is a challenge. It's a challenge right now. I'm sitting here thinking about it.
But I think it's a great metaphor, Nina, and it's a fabulous metaphor for the unconscious mind, because that clutter that we have in our world is no different to the clutter we have in our mind. And I think one of the statements that really sticks in my mind that Bob Proctor said years ago, he said, "See that table?" He said, "Can you put anything where that table is?" I said, "No." He said, "Then that's your answer." He said, "I can't put anything new in your mind or tell you anything new until you're prepared to release the clutter." And he said, once you release the clutter, then there's a space. He said, when you move that table, you create a space. I love that because for me, it's like create the space for the good that you desire.
Well, I got a big job ahead of me. My house is so cluttered. I'm not happy unless I got lots of things everywhere. But not true. But I'm not clutter because I also have a closet, a garage full of packages and boxes and stuff because I was in a big house. And I look at all this stuff and I think, what do I need this all for? So someone said to me, eBay. So.
eBay would clear your consciousness.
Well, I think a lot of people have all that stuff because it's what defines them, don't you think? That's who they are.
Sometimes I feel just about myself. Sometimes I feel it's a little bit of security that I've got all this stuff. So now because I got all this stuff, I'm secure, and I've actually accumulated all this stuff, and I feel really good because I have stuff that maybe financially it makes me feel good. I don't know.
But do you feel that security is real?
No. No, I don't think it's real at all because I could actually do without it. I really could.
And you know what's interesting that you're talking about houses and clutters, and I love what Linda had, that analogy or that image of moving the table and the clutter. I had the opportunity to live in a 36-foot RV, fifth wheel, for 2 years because when we moved to Colorado, we weren't quite sure if we were going to stay here or what have you. Living in an RV, you only have so much space, and when you go out, it's a great place, and it really brings home the simplicity of life. That when you have, I love the rainstorms with the rain hitting the roof, but the piece is that it really brings home to where that all you have is a roof, you have food, and you have shelter, and that's all you need. And you couldn't go shopping because there was no place to put anything, Yeah. So it does bring home the simplicities of life.
So get rid of all the big houses and let's all live in one room.
Yeah, exactly.
Sounds good to me.
Exactly. I went from the 36-foot square foot RV fifth wheel to a 6,000 square foot house.
I think one of the important.
That's a headache.
I think one of the important things for people to understand there, though, is that when we drive ourselves like on automatic pilot, we're actually living off adrenaline. And adrenaline's a drug that's inside of us. And however, there will be a point where that adrenaline runs out. And that's what we've all talked about at some point, that we all got to a point, whether it was, through illness with me or with Tori making a decision, Nina or Janet, whatever that time was in their world. Getting married was another time. But when we're born with this SOD, sodium oxide dismutase, and it's like an adrenaline, an antioxidant that just keeps us going, and we can live off it. It gradually wears out if we don't put nutrients back in, and that's where we start to not feel well, and the clutter doesn't seem right, and everything seems overwhelming, and so when people get to that point, it might be a recognizable point for you to say, am I living on automatic pilot, and what can I do to just go stop? Even though I'm helping a couple of people move right now, last night I said to my son, stop, I'm going home. honey, I don't care if you still have to unload a truck or whatever has to happen. I'm going home and I'm going to bed because. But before, I wouldn't do that. And there's a lot of people out there that probably wouldn't have either in their earlier day. They would have gone, yeah, just keep going, keep going. For what purpose? I got lupus. There's no point in getting us to a point where we then don't function at all.
Yep. It often takes a significant emotional event to bring us to a point where we have to make that decision. And that's where the ego is going to decide whether it's going to win or the consciousness is going to decide whether it's going to win. But one way or the other, it's got to go one way.
Absolutely. I think it's a great feeling, though, and I'm actually, I don't want to brag about it, but I'm really feeling that right now. I'm in the past probably about 3 or 4 weeks of putting myself, I'm thinking of moving back to England, actually, with my family. And it's like a relief of actually understanding what I really want and how I want it. And it's like this big relief that sort of come all over me and through me that I've made my mind up. And as you said, it's sort of making that mind up and making that move of getting rid of all your stuff. I call it stuff. It's the stuff we collect around us that we really don't need. But it just makes you feel so relieved when you make your mind up. It's just a beautiful feeling.
You have some stuff that I would like to have.
Okay.
I just want to put that in.
Send me an email.
So,
I actually did that in my last house. As I was moving, this lady came in. I said, do you like this lounge? She said, I love it. I said, would you like to get a truck? Yeah. Would you like to get a truck? It's all yours. Do you like this cabinet? I love it. Would you like to get a truck? You just take it. And I just gave so much away. It was so amazing.
Is that a wonderful feeling, Linda?
Yeah.
It's just like
so. Ninon, you can have the biggest garage sale on the planet.
Well, I'll tell you, I used to live in Bel Air. I had a 7,000-foot house in Bel Air, and I must have been one of the first people up there to actually have a garage sale in Bel Air, and it was right above the Bel Air Hotel, and it was beautiful. And I had all these movie stars came to my garage sale, and because they wanted to see what I had, because they thought they had some good, which I did, but I had some great stuff. But it was so funny. But yes, I did have a garage sale, and I loved it. Got rid of stuff.
That's what we need to do in our minds. Have a garage sale.
But we're talking about things, but you're right. Get to your mind to get rid of all that stuff, like Tori was saying, like a computer. Clean it out.
So let's give our viewers a few more ideas as to how they can stop. And how they can interrupt their automatic pilot if they wish to. Would you like to go first, Tori?
Yeah, yes, I would, because I've been actually working with some of my clients with this particular question you just asked, Steve, and that's doing something different all day long. Whether it's brushing your teeth with your left hand, putting on your right shoe or your left shoe first, driving to work a different way, not going to your favorite restaurant and not getting your regular meal, because as creatures of humans are very much creatures of habit, and the more we reinforce the things that we do on a regular basis, the more we get locked into our pattern. And in order to get out of ourselves, we need to break those patterns. And the best way to do it is start doing everything differently. Because, we get to a time in our life where, say when you talk about a disease or an illness or something that we're not used to dealing with, we go into a state of mind that's not common for us. And we can actually prepare ourselves, not saying to prepare ourselves for disease, but prepare ourselves to be open to being unconscious or open to be into the collective consciousness by simply not doing the same thing all the time the same way. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes absolute sense.
Lot of sense.
How challenging would this be for people since we are so, a lot of us, I mean, that includes me as well, that there's certain things that we do a certain way. And how do we get over the challenge where it's almost like we don't want to change? Like what you're requesting or what you suggesting is basically change. And people, in my experience, don't respond real well to change.
They're afraid.
That's a great question, Steve. And the thing is that not everybody, I believe, is ready for an unconscious or a growth in their lives. we immerse ourselves, the people on this call, the people that I deal with, we immerse ourselves in moving towards the unconsciousness or to the collective consciousness. It doesn't mean that it's ready. Everybody's ready for that. So it's okay if you're not ready and you want to stay where you are, and where you are in your life right now is not a good place. But I would imagine that most of the people that are listening to this program right now are ready for a move or well on their path for a new direction. So in my mind, it's about making yourself uncomfortable as often as you're able to. And like as a child, has a new game that somebody pulls out the game and starts reading the instructions. We make instructions for ourselves because for each and every one of us, we know what makes us comfortable and we know what makes us uncomfortable. So if it's public speaking, if it's taking the lead in something, do it. Find out or think about what in the past has made you really uncomfortable, and then go out of your way to do that thing. And that's what I tell my clients all the time.
Yeah, that's very good, Tori, because really, the only place there's growth is going outside of our comfort zone. And I'm kind of watching kind of myself right now, and I've noticed that how much I have changed. It's like, in the past, I used to put all the hard things that I had to do last, and today I'm completely the opposite. In the morning when I get up, either nowadays at 5 o'clock in the morning, I look at the things that I need to accomplish that day, and I'll pick the hardest things, the things that are the most challenging, and I'll get those done first.
Yes, absolutely.
It's amazing. What a difference.
And how much easier.
I think Brian Tracy called it "eat the frog."
For breakfast.
Or
No,
it will eat you.
He called it "eat the frog" because he said, "Do the hardest thing first, and you'd be surprised how not hard it was."
And how the rest of the day will proceed in a very happy moment because you've got that behind you now. It's finished. It's done. Goodbye. And it's funny what you were talking about, Tori. But when I was coming out into the world, was 16, I left home, and I was very, very, very shy. For many years, I was shy. And I used to put myself into places where I could not be shy to get over my shyness. And it was very hard and it was very difficult because I just didn't know what to do or how to do. I was very sheltered as a child, so I didn't know what was out there. And as I slowly got into this sort of feeling of being comfortable in a place, then I would go somewhere else and do the same thing so that I made myself feel at ease. And I did, and I felt so much more comfortable by forcing the envelope, forcing the issue, forcing my problem so that it wouldn't be a problem, because I knew it would be a problem all my life if I continued how I was, because I'd never be able to get to where I wanted to go to unless I got over this shyness thing. And it was tough, but that's how I did it. Exactly what you said, Tori.
Yeah. How wonderful it is when you start to get the rewards, that feedback from doing that hard thing, and you get that same satisfaction you get from doing, the easy thing. And then you do it again, and then you're able to do harder things. And that's where the real growth comes. For me, what I believe it's about an identity change, and in order to change your identity, to move up the conscious ladder, I call it, we need to really get in that place where it gets hard. And then it gets hard only while you're growing, and then it gets easy again. So guess what? It's time to make it hard.
So Tori, every time any one of our guests or any one of our cast members gets general, like you just did, I move in and I make a request. Could you give us a personal example, a recent one, where you have done what you were just talking about?
Oh, absolutely. I started a new project just past February. And I've been an entrepreneur my entire life. I've never had a job. And I did something for the first time that I always wanted to do, which was to become a speaker. And I needed to speak in order to, I'm the speaker on my project. And when I turned that red light of that camera on, all of a sudden, I didn't know what to say. I didn't even know what my name is.
We've all been there. Don't worry, Tori. We've all been there. We've all done that.
And I remember during that experience, I have a 9-year-old son, and I said, Alex, can you come in the room and just stand by the camera, and I'm going to talk. Daddy's going to talk to you. So he did, and he got bored of listening to me after about 3 minutes. So
tells you something about your child.
So he left the room, and then I noticed nearby there was a picture of him, and I tried desperately to tape a 8x10 picture on top of the camera, but it wasn't going to work, and even if I got it up there. So after that, I said, Alex, you know what? Daddy will take you out for ice cream if you just listen to me for another 15 minutes.
Bribery.
But I tell you, I spent the next 4 days, filming and recording, and it got easier and easier, and I felt that I was out of the woods. But the reality is that after that 4 days, I went on some business trips, and I was out of town. Actually, I was out of the country for 2 weeks. And when I came back to the camera, it started all over again. I didn't get out of the woods. I was back in the woods again. And what happened the first time is I looked and took a peek. And in order to have sustained growth, we need to get out of the woods and we need to run way out into that field. So because we're so used to the comfort zone, we're so used to looking for the couch, we're so used to looking for the a lot of people, or myself, mashed potatoes and I love hot dogs. Hot dogs are my favorite food, and a lot of people, realize that hot dogs are not the best thing for us. But
No.
I feel
No.
good when I have a hot dog.
No. If you gave me one, I wouldn't eat it. Because
I happen to love
today
Tori,
I know what's in it.
Tori, I love hot dogs. I don't eat them maybe once a year, but I do drive past places where they are, and I have to really say, no, Ninon, you can't have a hot dog. I love them. I'm like you, but I do. I'm very disciplined though, but I love them.
So Tori, what are some of the tools and some of the modalities that you're using right now to help people in terms of your clientele? What are you up to?
The most valuable tool I can give you is that the first time I needed to go on stage in front of several hundred people, I practiced for tens of hours. I had my script down perfectly, and it was the moment that they were putting the mic and doing the mic check on me backstage that I went into a state of total fear. And one of my instructors, my teachers told me that fear is about going internal. It's about thinking and worrying about yourself. So the two things that I did in that moment, and it's what I use on a daily basis, is any time that I'm feeling like I'm going internal and I'm not, reaching the place that I want to be, which is my consciousness, is I need to think about the people that I'm serving, and I need to think about the outcome. And that particular day, I'll always remember for the rest of my life, because when I was standing there and he said, "You ready?" I said, "I can't even remember my name." What I thought about was the people in the audience really needed to hear what I had to say, because I was really confident about the message I was bringing. And I thought about leaving the stage, not being on stage, but leaving the stage and hearing their applause. And the applause were no guarantee, but I felt confident that there would be applause. And listen, let's face it, even if I did a bad job, people are kind these days, right? So
I have to clap you to get off the stage or clap you to stay on.
So whatever that clap was going to make me feel happy. So, I got out of my own skin for a moment. I figured, listen, I'm going to give my message. And I talked about things that, were comfortable to me. And I talk about my son a lot because he's given me so many experiences. I'm an NLP trainer, and I teach my son a lot of things. And often my best lessons come from him teaching me what I taught him when I forgot, because I went internal.
But also, you're also in contact with your son a lot, and you're very comfortable with your son, and there's no edges, there's no nothing. So you're with your son 24 hours a day. Well, maybe not all the time, but that's why you always gravitate to your son, because that's a comfort place for you to be. And
Absolutely.
You know what he's going to say, you know what you can say, you know the conversations, and you just relate that out there. So when you think of your son, that's how you're thinking, and then you release that pain. But also, when you're feeling very nervous and you're very agitated or you're feeling uncomfortable, use that energy, because when you start using that energy of that uncomfort zone, it comes out in a beautiful way. And most people don't understand that. Majority of singers, actors, everybody, all of us, we're very nervous before we actually doing our part. And after we've done it for a couple of minutes, we're now comfortable. But we all feel that, but we use it.
You know what's really interesting that I didn't realize until you brought that out for me? I thought about that I had to do, it was only a 10-minute performance, but about 7 minutes into that performance, I knew I was going to talk about my son for the next 2 minutes. So I was going to pretty much wrap up my talk. And my energy basically went to that comfort zone again. So I guess I found a comfort zone inside an uncomfortable place. And again, I used my son in that context. But I realized that you're absolutely right. find that happy spot, that happy place that we all have inside of us, to go there. And that happy spot usually doesn't. It's usually an external thing. It's usually not an internal thing.
And it comes out very natural, and it comes out very definite and very natural, and everybody believes you because it is the truth. Because you're not speaking from any other place but the truth. I mean, I'm going to be talking at the funeral. I know exactly what I'm going to say at the funeral. There's one particular part in the funeral, and I know now that everyone's going to laugh at this particular thing because of my uncle and my aunt and my husband at that time, and I know that's going to. But I'm going to be in a comfort zone when I tell that story, so I know it's going to come out great already.
Okay.
Yes, that's a beautiful thing.
So what's the difference between saying something or making a presentation, or doing a public speaking engagement where you scripted your performance, and what we're doing right now on the show here, which is completely unscripted? I mean, we don't know. We have no idea what's going to come up and what we're going to say next, because this is completely natural. And this way of, for example, doing a television show, I call this mostly being connected to our hearts. And I think when I'm experiencing people doing public speaking, I can tell when somebody's connected to their heart and when they're not. And some people can be so good at public speaking that they may not be connected to their hearts at all, but they're really good.
They're not.
Yeah.
Yes, I experienced. That's a good example, Steve. I experienced that just recently up in Canada. And on the first day, I went through all the different speakers that were from all around the world. And I thought, you know what? We've all said the same thing. Isn't that interesting? We've all said the same thing, only in a slightly different way. And we're supposed to come back tomorrow? Forget it. So I sat there and I remember thinking, why don't we turn it into a workshop? There were 3 main points that came out of all those speakers. And like Tori said, it's about that consciousness, reaching that level of awareness, or climbing the ladder. That was one of the things that came out. How do you do that? Another thing was, how do you set that goal for coming out and becoming more conscious and just taking that risk, you know? And what is the difference between the conscious and unconscious mind? So they were 3 points. And so I walked in the next day and ran it as a workshop. Forget public speaking. And that was just totally coming from my heart, like what more? And I think for me, the message is, what more can I give the client? What more is it that I can give that client so that they leave here a really happy puppy? And then it just flows. And your hour or 2 hours or 3/4 of an hour, whatever you've got, is gone so quickly because it's not about you. It's never been about you. It's about you learning what you need to learn and then sharing that with the group that's come to hear you.
Yes, it's. I believe it's so much about taking a big burlap bag and stuffing the ego in it.
Yeah.
And having somebody just take it away.
I left mine back up in the room at the hotel. I just put my ego up there and went, right.
But you were also talking the truth. That's why it was so easy for you, Linda, because you were actually talking about the truth and actually things that happened to you and how you've gone through it, and it was the truth coming out. So when the truth comes out, it comes out so easily and so truthfully, and it truly does connect with people. When you're doing a speech and you've got to talk about certain things in that speech, and you've got to make sure you get them all right, that's when it becomes a little tricky and a little nervous, because I don't want to say the wrong thing. And also when it's all written down, you're trying to follow the script more than you are trying to just talk from your heart. That's difficult.
Yes.
Well,
but I think on numerous occasions you can turn a speech into something that's a lot more enjoyable. And I remember doing it in China. And I remember, because they were all sitting there, 500 of them, you know, in their suits and high heel shoes, and no one moves, and it was about as boring as it gets, you know, people are reading their papers, and I went, this is just to die for. And so I came up and I said, right, you over there, a group over there, group over there, group over there, and I turned it, because we were talking about aging, and I turned it into a retirement village. And I said, Every 2 minutes, you're going to have to move to another activity, and I want to show you 6 different activities that you can do with no cost. And the whole place, the next speaker came, and they said, you have to go away, we're having too much fun.
That's what it's supposed to be, though. That's what life is.
They learnt more probably doing that than had I got up and just read my paper that I'd worked on for 6 months.
So isn't your objective? I know that it is definitely mine. Is that when I'm really happy, and what makes me really happy, when people actually get something, like something sticks with them, so that, because it's really not necessarily about all the content. For me, it's about have people listen and watch the content, but then have something touch, move, and inspire them, so that they walk away with something that's going to make a difference in their lives. Isn't that your experience, Tori?
Oh, absolutely. You know, I spent the last year, probably maybe for 2 months in seminars. And I recently reviewed my notes, and if I stacked all my books together, it'd be about 6 inches thick. And as I went through my books, I realized there were not that many things there that really inspired me, but except for the feelings that I had. And these feelings that I had in the moment had not that much to do with the content that was being delivered, but the nerve that it struck for me. And that nerve struck maybe some place that I experienced something maybe 30 years ago, but it activated something, and it moved me in such a way. So, Steve, I totally believe that you're right. It's not about the content. It's about the vibrational frequencies that we're able to experience or step to or step into from what we're experiencing in life, whatever that might be, whether it's new knowledge, a new place, a new whatever, new pair of shoes even, you know.
But, and I agree with you, Steve. Yeah, there you are, back to the shoes again, huh? Go. But I agree, Steve. It's funny. I'm teaching a young lady right now because I teach image and branding and all this stuff. And this young lady is very, very sweet. She's about 30, 31, and and I think it's when she gives me the compliment, she says, Ninon, I have learned so much from you, but a lot of people don't tell you that. But when they tell you that you feel so good about yourself, when you know you've given something to them, they have learned by it. And she said, whenever I'm with you, she said, my energy, she said, even if you just stand there, she said, my energy goes up and I feel so great, and I feel so powerful, and that I'm doing everything right because of what you've taught me. So I think getting the sort of, not the compliments, but when people acknowledge that you really have helped them, I think that sort of makes you feel good as a person that, oh, I've done my job and I've made her feel good. And I think that really is accomplishment of when people do that.
And I think that's an interesting point, Ninon, because sometimes we don't take those compliments.
No.
How difficult is it? And when people are on automatic pilot, the compliments can come, but it's just like they flick off. They flick off. And that's because we're in masculine energy. And when we're in masculine energy, the compliments flick off because we don't want to hear it. A lot of us, if we can get our feminine side, that receiving, you know, just sit for a while and receive, like Tori said, receive the universe, receive the trees, receive the birds. It's just beautiful to sit and just receive what's out there. And that's getting in touch with your feminine side. Yeah, man or woman, getting in touch with your feminine side is taking in and receiving. And all of a sudden, the automatic pilot just switches off.
Yeah, it does.
So Linda, when was the last time you got touched, moved, and inspired by something? And could you take us there?
Yeah, just nature itself. I'm a bit like Tori. I just down near my dad's new village, there's a lake. And I really love to go there, and the birds, the noise, the people on the lake just going past with their canoes or paddles, or out here in Australia we're very sporty, so there's people on surfboards with with rowers. People have invented so many things to move. I love watching the colour, and I'm just inspired by, and even this morning, walking in the dark, I've been up since 4 o'clock, so it's only 6 o'clock here, and walking in the dark and listening to the ocean. I can't even see it, but listening to the ocean. I love that. I'm inspired by sunrises, I just love nature.
Wow. So I was recently inspired by my son. Actually, it was today. My youngest. And some of you that know me or have heard me on the shows before, you may remember that my youngest son is my biggest challenge. He is right now 26, and he had the most challenges as he was growing up later on in his life with drugs and things like that. And what moved and touched me and inspired me today is today he's moving his family from where he's living to Aurora. And he's going to be 10 minutes from his workplace And this is a kid that's 26 years old, and his rent is going to be $1,200, and he's the only one working. And he has 2 kids and a wife to support, and he's totally up for the challenge. He recently made a supervisor, and he works like 12 hours a day. And I hardly can believe the change that, in terms of, he was the most irresponsible kid that I knew when he was growing up, and because he turned to drugs. And he completely turned his life around. And that was just so inspiring today that he just came by to say that, he's packing up everything and he's moving today. And he brought over my granddaughter because we're watching her. She's only 6. And it's just so inspiring when you see your own kids completely turn out. It's just awesome.
Have you told him that? Have you told him how awesome he is?
Yes,
you haven't,
yes, I have told him
forget,
that. Yes, I have told him that today.
Good,
I told him that I'm just so proud of you. It's like, it really takes something today to be able to support a family of 4. And he's moving because right now it's just a 2-bedroom place he's living in, and he's moving to a 3-bedroom because he recognized that, his daughter is 6 and she needs to have her own room, and his son has to have his own room, and they need a bigger place. And he doesn't want to spend an hour to 2 hours on the freeway, going to work and coming back from work. And he can find, because he shared that with me before, that by the time he gets home, he's so frustrated and he's so angry of the traffic, to be in the traffic for an hour and 2 hours. And I just don't understand somehow how people like in California and LA deal with that, because it's an everyday thing.
Or Sydney.
Yeah. Or Sydney. Why?
I do see what your son has done, Steve, is he put a lot of thought, not only for himself, but he put a lot of thought into his wife and 2 children as well. And he actually calculated and worked it all out, which you've got to admire that, because he's actually got inside his own self-being and thought, I'm now going to be able to spend 2 hours extra with my children and my wife because I won't be on the freeway. And I guarantee you put all that into the thought of it and to make that challenge. But now it's very funny, because once you even have to pay more rent and things become more expensive, it's amazing how you're able to do it when you just let go. And it all falls into place, and sort of always living at a lower level and putting yourself into a higher level, and you're going to make it, and you're going to do it. And we always think so many times that we can't, but we actually can do that. And it's quite easy when we put ourselves in that place.
Yeah, it's fantastic. And he actually called me 2 weeks before he made the commitment, and because he wanted to make sure that the numbers made sense, and is he doing the right thing, which right there just surprised the heck out of me. I'm not used to him calling me and running things by me. He just does, things. He used to do things on his own, but he did call me this time, which was another thing I acknowledged him for. And I said, look, just even that your rent is going to be just a couple of $100 more, you're gonna make up for that just in the gas that you use.
Yeah.
So, and the time.
He's going to feel better.
And
he's going to be happier.
Yeah, and you're not going to be going home and kicking the cats and the kids because you can't deal with this stuff because you're just too tired.
Yeah.
So it's a win-win all the way around. So I mean that just I hope I was able to express it enough so that when your own kid does something like this, it can be very touching and very moving, and I was certainly moved and touched.
And I think very touching and very moving as long as you tell them. As long as you tell them how you feel and how great they are. And I think too many times we don't do that with people and thank them and say how great they are. We just sort of pass it by and say it's okay. And we don't actually give them that beautiful feeling that to make them feel good as well, because that's what you're actually doing. So I admire
and
you.
acknowledge that. And,
Yes.
if you don't want to tell them, at least hug them.
Yeah, do so. Well,
Hug
I'm a
them,
hugger.
just
I'm Yeah, just give them a hug. I'm a Miss Positive. I try to give people the best I possibly can every day. And I've got a girlfriend right now that's, my car broke down yesterday. I don't know what happened, but anyway. So she picked me up, and now she's taking me back to my car. And then she's even offered to take me to the airport tomorrow morning. I mean, how sweet is that? And how will I acknowledge that? And I know how I'll acknowledge it, but at least I will acknowledge of how kind that is for someone to actually do all those 3 things for me in just one day. It's just amazing.
Steve, you know what's a beautiful thing when I think about, you talk about your son, which, children is such a great source of energy for all of us, that, is a very well-known speaker, has been around a long time. He talks about pain and pleasure. And I recently made this analogy within the last couple of years that I've been sort of back testing about energy. And, we're all creatures of pure energy, realistically, there's nothing, none of us are really here right now. We're sort of an illusion of energy. And when you look at events in our lives, like in that particular case, when you talk about drugs, there was, even though a lot of us would consider that a negative event, for an individual, there was a lot of energy involved there for that individual. And in this case, it would be your child. But when he got a family and he starting to see there was more energy to be gained from moving towards his children and moving towards his wife and moving towards a greater source of energy, what a beautiful conversion or transference of a lower sort of energy to a higher sort of energy. And I remember a time, I was about 20 years old, a gentleman that I really respected told me, he said, Tori, as we move in our life to a higher stature where we're getting more energy, we tend never go backwards anymore. And he used the word energy, and at the time I didn't understand it, but I understand it very well now. But when we get a place in our life where we can receive more energy, we refuse to settle for less. So we find ourselves looking for more and more sources where we can get that fill, that replenishment. It's like going to the gas station for a human. It's just bringing in that pure energy. And I believe that on the path to consciousness, when we start to see that there's an unlimited amount of consciousness energy out there for all of us, we start to let go of the ego, and we let go of all the things that are sort of worldly or a realistic reality world that really are not real. And we find we can tap into that unlimited source of energy and fulfill everything that we ever wanted in our lives. And when we reach that, I think that's when we reach, some people would call heaven. And I believe heaven on earth is really, it's here. Heaven on earth is here.
Yeah, I agree with you, actually. I think we limit ourselves an awful lot of what we can't do instead of sort of feeling about what we can do, and just make that extra stretch. And if you fail, you fail. And I think that's probably a lot of people don't like to do something, because if they fail, people are going to talk about them. But it doesn't matter. If you fail, you're going to go to the next thing and make it bigger and better. And I think don't be afraid of failure, because in the end, it'll be a success.
You know what's interesting about failure, though? I found with a lot of my clients that failure for them is a source of energy, and they will go back to failure over and over again only because they haven't found a better source of energy, whether it's a bigger failure or another sort of failure. And it goes back to what I was talking about earlier about brushing your teeth with the left hand, or putting your shoes on with the opposite foot, or driving to work, or eating something different. I think when we start to recondition ourselves in finding ways to do things differently, we expose ourselves to other opportunities. So a person who fails all the time and they find energy in that failure, they may be quite happy with finding failure on a regular basis, because I know a lot of people do that. So maybe if they looked, and I know in my own experience, in my own life, when I started looking for maybe a different type of failure, because I failed this way maybe once or twice, let me find a different way to fail. Maybe I'll find something more interesting. But I'm serious in that. Finding another way to do something, whether it's a failure or a success, is another way.
Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. It doesn't matter, because at least you've tried something.
Yeah, I really have an issue. I really have an issue with the word failure, because I don't believe that we fail. It's just an experience. I mean, I had somebody tell me yesterday that they were a failure, and it like hit me in the heart. I'm going like, all right, I will refuse to believe that you are a failure. I mean, if you choose to believe that, that's up to you. But I refuse to believe that any human being is a failure. It's just we're having experiences, And it doesn't need to be, these experiences that we're experiencing doesn't need to be judged by anybody, nor need to be judged by us.
Absolutely correct.
Steve, when I use the term failure, I'm using it from an egotistical standpoint as a source of energy. So the ego would call it energy. The unconscious mind would call it, the ego would call it failure. The unconscious mind
and wants
would
to protect you from it.
Yeah, the unconscious mind would call it energy, and energy is energy. There's no such thing as bad energy. It's good energy all the way, all the way across the board.
So how do you, Tori, how do you notice, like how do you manage, I think our viewers probably get something out of this. How do you manage the ego? So if the ego wants to play, and how do you notice it that's where you are, that you're disconnected from yourself? How do you notice that?
I love that question because the ego tends to look at from my experience, the ego tends to look for where the problems exist. And the ego also, it has the ability to ask some very good questions. So for myself, a tool that I've been using for many years now that's literally changed my life is that when an event happens in my life, no matter what it is, if it's a good event, I'll use it. If it's a bad event, I'll use it. I'll ask myself, what does this event mean for me? But the answer, there's a trick question here. It has to be about myself. It has to be about the future. And it has to be positive. And the next question I'll ask is, how do I integrate that learning into my life? And then how can I teach somebody else about that learning? And now it becomes not about me anymore, and it becomes not about the past anymore. It's about taking whatever I just learned from that event, whether it's good, bad, or neutral, and make it in a positive event about my future and about myself, and then something that I can share with others. And in my case, I have 3 children, so I'll share that with them. So that my learning from my experience can benefit others. And now that I'm speaking, I'll share it with 40, 50, or 60 people, and I share it with my clients. So now my event, regardless of what was a negative event or where, somebody's going to learn and somebody's going to get something from it. So we can all do that. Steve, it comes down to choice. It really comes down to choice.
Do you think?
And it's also about asking great questions too, Tori. I think that was great. My philosophy's always been we're either winning or we're learning.
Yes.
And what can I learn from that? I coached soccer for 10 years, on a part-time basis. And I remember saying to the boys, you never lose a game. What you lose, what happens is we learn what not to do next time. So, did we have great trust between the players? Did we use our left foot? Did we use our right foot? Were we heading the ball properly? Ask great questions. What could you do next time so that you feel better? Because there's so many different things that come into play. But winning or learning, I love that, because then no one's a failure. It's just that, like Steve said, it's an experience. And there's always great learnings to come from everything.
We're always learning. We're
always interesting. Learning. So I'm just reminded of something that I used to say, and I know I haven't said it for a while, which is, for me, I know you said the word, it's a choice, and the way I feel about it is I have an opportunity to choose me, to be connected to myself and to my heart and to my higher self, and if I don't do that, the rest is an automatic pilot.
Do you think our audience, Tori, should know what automatic pilot means? Can you explain a little bit about that for our audience? Because we keep using the word automatic pilot, and I think maybe a few people think maybe we're flying a plane or something. So,
for me personally, I don't really like automatic pilot because it does sound confusing for myself. It's for me, automatic pilot, to use that term, means that it's sort of like when you drive in a car. Many of us have that experience. I know I have. I've driven from Los Angeles to San Diego, which was a 2.5-hour drive, and I don't remember any road, any highway, or anything that happened between those 2 points because I was so in my mind thinking about an amazing experience. Yeah, so automatically on autopilot, which means that we're not in our ego, we're not in ourself, we're not being obsessed with ourselves, and that's automatic. We disappear. It's about disappearing into our own reality.
Okay, awesome.
Good explanation. Yeah, that's very good. Just so as people understand what it is, we know, and we're out there, and we do our thing, but a lot of people don't understand exactly what it means or what we're talking about, but hopefully by now they do.
And if they don't, they will soon. All right, so believe it or not, this is what's called the Conscious Hour because it's almost over. And I just want to make sure that I thank all of our viewers as well as our guest, Tori Kositsky, and the entire cast that was here with us today, and the entire crew that's behind the glass making everything happen. And also I wanted to say that if any of our viewers were touched, moved, and inspired by anything we said, anything that we did, please go to Living Consciously TV and interact with us. And there's so many ways to interact with us. You can do it by leaving comments on any of our pages that allows you to leave comments, or you can go to our replays on our site and just make comments about each individual show as you were experiencing it. And what would you like us to cover also on future shows? We would like to really hear from our viewers in terms of what interests you and what are some of the things in your reality and in your world today that would help us having some dialogues about. And make sure that you come back next week, always on Saturdays, 3 p.m. Mountain Standard Time on Channel 56 on Comcast. I love you all, and thank you all for being here with us today. See you next week.
Thank you.